So we've finally got an emissions target and attached policy out of Labor, a 43% cut by 2030 and 604,000 new jobs. Now, it was only January last year that Anthony Albanese said Labor's last election target of 45% by 2030 was a mistake. But now 43% is just fine. His climate change spokesman, Chris Bowen, today gave the policy a lick of paint and lots of contrived enthusiasm.
We'll say to the Parliament, there's the target. We're not negotiating about it. We're not changing it. We're not amending it. There's the legislation with the target. Parliament can vote it up. The Parliament can vote it down.
Now, the comment on job creation has drawn the ire of the former ACTU president and Labor Party MP Jenny George today. She wrote in The Australian that the jobs pledge is unbelievable. And as for the 43% cut target, well, Scott Morrison has warned this is just their opening offer to the Greens.
So a Labor-Greens government would see their target, which is 75%, by the way, 75%. You know, this is the starting bid from Labor. It's not the final outcome. And if they have to get into that auction with the Greens to form government, and it won't be 43, that will be the opening bid, and it's going to end a lot higher than that.
Joining us now is Matt Canavan, Queensland National Senator. Matt, welcome to the program.
G'day, Chris. How are you, mate?
Very well, thank you. A 43% cut. Can Australia afford that?
Well, this is going to smash regional Australia, smash areas like the Hunter, which I'm in right now, because the Labor Party have found a climate change policy they love by shifting all of the burden of it onto the bush. This will be a carbon tax paid by the mining, by the manufacturing sectors of regional Australia. We know that because in their own policy, the Labor Party has identified 215 businesses that will pay the bill under their so-called safeguard mechanism, which is just a fancy name for a backdoor carbon tax. Those 215 businesses will be asked every year to jump as high as the Labor Party says, so that they can go off to the next climate change conference and say, look, aren't we good boys? We've reduced our emissions. Now, there are no banks in that 215 list. There are no big tech companies. They're all big emitters themselves because they use so much energy in their data centres. But there is basically every mine in the country, and not just coal mines. There's iron ore mines, there's gas facilities. These are the people of those 215 businesses, the workers in the high vis, that will pay the price for Labor's moral guilt.
Because voters need to understand, if the companies exceed their targets, they then have to buy permits from others, right?
Exactly right, Chris. So every year, the Labor Party is going to ask this body called the Clean Energy Regulator. They are a bunch of bureaucrats in Canberra. They are going to ask them to set a new hurdle for businesses in regional Australia that they have to jump over. And if they can't jump over it, they have to go by offsets from banks. There's the banks again. That's why they love this policy. You won't hear a word out from the banks against Labor's climate change policy. They love it because all the mining companies, all these businesses will have to go to the banks to buy carbon credits to buy their indulgence for the sin of making wealth and creating jobs for this country. I mean, Chris, we've only been able to get through the coronavirus because of the enormous wealth that is made by our coal, by our iron ore, by our gas industries. All of those exports alone are about half those industries, represent about half our exports now. And they're the ones that are going to be paying the bill. And what's going to happen to our country when we don't export as much iron ore, as much coal, or as much gas under a Labor Green government? We won't have the money in the bank to be able to provide the JobKeeper and other assistances we've been able to do the next time there's a major crisis. The mining sector helps this country pay its bills, and we can ill afford to kill this golden goose.
Labor's modelling talks about more than 600,000 jobs. The former ACTU president, Jenny George, says that's unbelievable. That policy didn't age too well.
Well, Jenny George has to be believed here, doesn't she, Chris? She has no incentive here to but tell the truth. She's not a partisan political hack. She's just telling it how it is. The Labor Party's policy, when you read it, they're saying that within 10 years, by 2030, we'll have 83% renewable energy. That's up from about 20% today. We've still got 60% of our energy comes from coal-fired power stations. Now, it's more absurd than the 600,000 jobs because Chris Bowen said today, Chris Bowen said, not a single job will be lost. Not a single job will be lost. So how we're going to go from shutting down almost all of our coal-fired power stations, at least 2/3 of them, on Labor's policy, and create all this change in our energy sector. And according to Chris Bowen, not a single job will be lost. Now, you may think there's a transition going on in our energy sector, but you'd be absolutely naive to think that that won't and could not cost any jobs. It will, and it will, as I say, it'll be areas like the Hunter, areas like Central Queensland, areas like the Pilbara that make the money for our nation that will feel the pain and will have massive job losses.
Yeah, especially in 9 years. Now, at the end of the day, both parties support net zero emissions by 2050. I know you think that's a step too far, but what is the benefit politically of a higher interim target? Who's going to win that particular battle?
All of these elite groups who have to go or want to go off to Davos, want to go off to the next climate change conference, want to be able to go there saying, hey, we're better than you. We've cut our emissions by X percent more. It doesn't change the temperature of the globe because China's not going to be doing anything in the next 10 years. India's not doing anything in the next 10 years. All the major Russia's not doing anything in the next 10 years. So it won't change the temperature. All it will do is make those that go to these international conferences feel and walk a little bit taller. I don't think that that's enough of a benefit to make average Australians pay the bill for these globalists to feel a bit better inside their heart.